What's going on, knuckleheads? This is George with Fighters Rep. Thanks for joining me today. And the question for today, Sunday, October 6, 2019, I can't believe it's October already, but October 6, 2019 is, was Sergiy Derevyanchenko robbed against Gennadiy Golovkin? That's what the boxing public is buzzing about today, and since last night, subsequent to their fight for the vacant IBF and IBO titles in the middleweight division in Madison Square Garden, New York. Hey, it was a fantastic fight. I was able to catch the fight alongside with the UFC 243 yesterday, and I want to just start off this conversation by saying I thought this was a hell of a fight. I thought this was a fantastic fight, and I thought ahead of time that this would be a good fight, considering the fact that if you've seen Sergiy Derevyanchenko fight before, you know that his nickname, the Technician, is absolutely perfect for the guy. He can box his butt off. The guy is slick. He's got decent power enough to keep people honest, and he can just really fight. And we've seen him in some really close fights, especially his fight against Daniel Jacobs, who, as we know, also gave Gennadiy Golovkin a hell of a time. So I was thinking, heading into this fight, that this was going to be a very difficult fight for an aging Gennadiy Golovkin. And I think it's important to point out that Gennadiy Golovkin is no longer, in 2019, the same fighter that he was a few years ago when he was just steamrolling through the middleweight division. I do not think it's acceptable or proper to say that Gennadiy Golovkin was never as good as we thought he was, because I think that would be a lie and a mistake. What I do think happened was Gennadiy Golovkin was the goods, but now at 37 years of age, he's no longer able to keep up with these young freaking warriors we got in this division. Actually, he's able to keep up with them, but he's having a harder and harder time of it. I think we saw his decline begin, if I'm being honest with you, in that Daniel Jacobs fight. I believe the second half of the Daniel Jacobs fight is when we started to see Gennadiy Golovkin age. Ever since then, Gennadiy Golovkin has not been the same fighter as the first half and before that Daniel Jacobs fight. And the reason I say that he began to age in that fight is he just has not been able to step on the gas and take out high-level competition the way he was doing before that. I've noticed him get hurt and get caught a lot more in his fights since that fight. Now, I do think he beat Daniel Jacobs. I didn't think that that fight was as close as everybody else thought, if I'm being honest. But his first, and also I even think his first fight against Canelo, Triple G should have been awarded the win in that fight. However, that second Canelo fight was extremely close, and this fight he had last night, knuckleheads, was so close that people are crying robbery and saying Sergiy Derevyanchenko was robbed. Now, do I feel that that was justified? I'm not really sure. If I'm being honest, I don't think crying robbery is proper in this situation. I thought it was an extremely close fight, an extremely competitive fight. What I will say is, I thought Triple G was hurt several times throughout this fight. Something that I'm not really used to was seeing him get hurt to the body, and that's something I wished that guys that were fighting him would have worked on before. He's such a balanced guy. He's got to set his feet when he punches, and that's where he derives all his power from. And it's just surprising to me that guys in the past haven't done more to go after the body the way Derevyanchenko did last night. And I think that I would agree that this was a robbery had Derevyanchenko in the very waning moments of the fight, or the waning rounds rather, maybe the last 2 or 3 rounds, had he gone more to the body, had he concentrated more to the body, I think he could have sealed this victory. But in the end, it was left up to the judges, and it's a DAZN show, knuckleheads. Gennadiy Golovkin is who he is. Sergiy Derevyanchenko is just not as popular or that guy. And Gennadiy Golovkin got away with the unanimous decision win. The scorecards for the bout were 114, 113, 115, 112. And 115, 112. Now let's take a look at some numbers, because again, this is an open forum for discussion. You don't have to agree with me. If you think Gennadiy Golovkin won that fight, please let me know. Leave your comments in the super chat, or in the chat, or in the comments boxes below. If you think Derevyanchenko won the fight, put that down there. Do you think it was a robbery? Let me know what you guys think. But at the end of the day, I thought it was a very close fight. And I think that the CompuBox stats, which we're going to look at right now, the CompuBox stats sort of favor the fact that this was a very, very close fight. So let's go ahead and take a look. We'll start with the total punches landed. Okay, we're going to look at that first. 243 for Gennadiy Golovkin with an accuracy rate of 33.8%. Versus Derevyanchenko landing 230. So as far as punches landed, you got to go with Golovkin based on CompuBox. Obviously, it's not the end-all, be-all. Perhaps it's not a perfect science, this CompuBox thing. But I think if you look at CompuBox and take it for what it is and what it purports to be, we've got 243 punches for Gennadiy Golovkin versus Derevyanchenko's 230 and a slightly lower accuracy at 31.2. We take a look next at the jabs, which I think is an interesting statistic. You had Gennadiy Golovkin landing 108 jabs versus Derevyanchenko landing 47. 47 jabs. You know, that is a huge difference there. And then finally, body punches. Now, this was a big deal too. CompuBox has it listed that Derevyanchenko landed 183 power punches, and 50 of those were body shots, whereas Golovkin landed only 136 power punches, and only 21 of those were body shots. And you can see that throughout the fight, Derevyanchenko was hurting Gennadiy Golovkin to the body. Now, I think it's important that we don't look over the fact that Gennadiy Golovkin did get the knockdown early in the fight against Derevyanchenko. And, that's going to give him a little bit of a buffer here. But I think at the same time, I've never seen Golovkin hurt this many times in a fight. I felt like in certain sequences in this fight, Derevyanchenko was obviously hurting him to the body, and I think that's one of the things that's really got boxing fans up in arms. And that's one of the things I think that people are kind of keeping in their minds when they're saying, oh, this fight was a robbery, which again, I can't, I'm not totally going to disagree with anybody. Obviously, boxing scoring is a subjective thing, and this issue comes up all the time. But I thought it was a very close fight. Again, another thing to point out is power punches. Derevyanchenko landed almost 50 more power punches than Golovkin. And this was something that I believe in watching the fight seemed pretty obvious. Derevyanchenko was teeing off at times on Golovkin. Now, that's not to say that Golovkin wasn't doing the same, but I felt like Derevyanchenko definitely gave a great account of himself in that fight last night, and it was an extremely competitive fight. Do I think the scorecards were fair? I couldn't really argue too much with the 114, 113. I felt like the 115, 112 scorecards might have been slightly wide, but at the same time, it was such a close fight. And again, boxing scoring is so subjective that I can't really call it a robbery. So based on that, I thought it was a great fight. I didn't think it was a robbery. I think Gennadiy Golovkin definitely had a very tough fight last night, and he's going to have to second guess himself and his career going forward because he does not look like the same guy. Now, Jonathan Banks, who's his trainer, was saying he was extremely ill, horribly ill. But I believe this is, and with all due respect to Gennadiy Golovkin, an excuse that was used not so long ago in another fight that he had. So if these illnesses are an actual thing, then maybe he's got something to kind of mitigate or soften the blow of his performance last night. But if this is how he's going to keep fighting, if he's going to keep getting into these long, drawn-out wars where it's questionable whether he won or not, with the top of the division, then Gennadiy Golovkin at the age of 37 or 38, I believe, is going to have a sit-down with his team and see what he can do going forward, either to slightly improve or prevent these sort of things from happening. Basically himself being in these long, drawn-out fights where it looks like he's getting beaten up. He's maybe going to have to, tap back into his basics, maybe not try to change his style the way Jonathan Banks wanted him to change his style. Whatever it is, he's going to have to figure it out because he can't keep getting into tight fights like this and expect to win. In fact, we did see him lose two close fights to Canelo Alvarez. Of course, he should have probably won that first one, but that second one was a toss-up. And this fight last night was, I think, Golovkin's worst performance in a very long time, although it was not facilitated by Derevyanchenko, who looked absolutely fantastic out there. I mean, this fight was a dog fight. Derevyanchenko had a cut over his eye. He was knocked down. He came to fight. He came to win, and this guy's highly skilled. So, I mean, was it Derevyanchenko's style that gave Golovkin all these problems? Or is it just the fact that he's getting up there in age and it's time for him to start contemplating maybe retirement? With all the money he's making in boxing, I don't see him retiring anytime soon, but he may be going up against some young dogs in the near future that may have him contemplating retirement. Again, if he's going to keep fighting with these young tigers at the elite level, he is going to have to tighten up because last night was not a good look for Gennadiy Golovkin and his brand, and the people at Madison Square Garden let him know it. They let him have it. He was getting booed after the decision was called out. Derevyanchenko made a ton of fans last night. I've been a fan because I think he's a beast after the way he fought Daniel Jacobs. But last night, man, he put everything on the line, and you got to respect him. And you got to respect Triple G too. It's just, is Triple G nearing the finish line? I think after last night, he certainly is. Again, I've never seen him hurt so many times. And I think the fact that he was hurt so many times and the fact that we have a guy in Triple G who once had an aura of invincibility and is now being compromised over and over again in these fights, I think that's really starting to influence fans in their decisions and in their judgment on these Triple G fights. They're used to this guy dominating, and when he's getting beat up and hurt, they're thinking to themselves, man, this guy should have lost this fight. I think a little bit of the objectivity is lost when that's happening, but it is what it is. That's probably a part of it. But again, this is just my opinion. I thought it was a close fight. I would have been okay with it going either way. I was okay with Gennadiy Golovkin getting a decision. I thought maybe it was closer. I wasn't sure who won. I just thought it was a fantastic fight. I didn't see it as a robbery per se. But if you did, let me know what you thought that made it a robbery. I'm definitely excited to hear what you guys have to say in your opinions. And I appreciate your time. Before I sign off here, I'll let you guys know if you like talking about combat sports and if you like watching free fights and interviews with people in the fight game, subscribe to the channel. It'll be greatly appreciated. Also, we're building the next generation of striking promotions. We're the only kickboxing promotion in the entire state of California. So if you donate to the super chat or below or pick up some Fighters Rep gear in the links below in the description, or even if you click the Amazon associate link in the description below and buy anything from Amazon, you don't have to buy the Everlast hand wraps that it takes you to. But if you buy anything after clicking that link, if you buy anything from Amazon, we get a commission. It costs nothing to you, and you'll be helping us build the next generation of combat sports strikers, and that's Fighters Rep Promotions. And we will be back the first quarter of next year. We'll also be uploading our fights from Fighters Rep 8, so you guys can enjoy those for free. And the first actual highlight just came out today, so be sure to check that out. And before I sign off, it looks like we've got Ganesh Dongana in the chat. Ganesh, thank you so much for joining the chat. My brother is saying shout out from Nepal. Big shout out from Nepal, or rather from the United States back to Nepal. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel. You're much appreciated. I love it when we have international visitors in here, or any visitor at all, if I'm being honest. And really appreciate your time. So you all have a fantastic Sunday. Remember to tune in again Thursday at 9 p.m. Pacific for our predictions and previews. And then immediately after the big fight right here, we have a discussion. So typically on Saturdays, immediately after the big fights, you can tune in and get your fix and let us know what you think. Until next time, we'll see you soon, knuckleheads. Take care of yourselves. Click the link below for your official Fighters Rep merchandise and join Knucklehead Nation.